Welcome to the first episode of Themes and Variations, titled Songs, Poems, and a Garden Full of Flowers. I am here with Robyn Driedger-Klassen, who is an accomplished singer, a phenomenal music educator, and an avid gardener. Thanks for being here, Robyn.
Thank you.
Did you always know you were going to be a singer?
I didn't always know I was going to be a singer. I had lots of wonderful music education going all the way through my childhood. Parents who paid for my piano lessons, even though I was never really very good. I had professional musicians in my family, but I never really thought of it as being a job.
Right.
And I do clearly remember thinking, I'm going to be a famous conductor someday. I thought I was going to be a conductor.
Right.
And then I had my first singing lesson when I was 16, and I was really good at it. It was just, I didn't know I was good at it. It was just really easy, and it was way easier than playing Bach on the piano, because I was really not good at that. It wasn't until I was halfway through my ed degree in French education that I realized I can't do this. I don't want to teach. I want to sing. And so I quit my degree and I moved out here to Vancouver. Literally at the last minute before the school year, university year started, because I got in really, really, really late acceptance. And,
to UBC.
To UBC. And really late. I think it was 3 weeks before the start of the school year.
Right.
I was like, please, I need to sing. And they were so I don't know, somebody was a really nice fairy godmother.
Yeah.
And I got in, and I never looked back. Thank goodness.
Well, yeah, exactly. So I just have a statement about what you just said about people who are realizing that is what they want to do, and that clarity that they find it in themselves, and then they just go and pursue it. But there's another component to it, and the kind of statement that I'm going to read is in relationship with that. So at some point in every artist's life, if they want to live a life pursuing their craft, they have to make a claim that they have something of artistic value to offer. And then they have to stand by it. And that requires courage, or as you ask us to write down on the scores, coraggio.
Coraggio.
Do you have any thoughts on that statement? Or, how do you stay open in your heart and kind of believe in yourself when you're faced with storms?
Yeah, it's hard. Because inevitably there will be people that say to you, what are you doing? Get a real job, right? You're always going to hear someone say that. You do need to know what you want to say. And you need to ask yourself that every single day. What do I want to say? What do I want to say today? What do I want to say in this minute?
Right.
And stand by it, and actually, oh my gosh, it takes so much courage to actually do that. Because we're it's this fancy thing in our society right now to, stand up and use your voice and say the thing. But it's actually really scary when you know that people are listening to you and judging you.
Right.
And I wouldn't pay money for that painting. But it's also what I want to say right now.
Right. And it's kind of especially true for these art that comes with an establishment behind it, right?
Oh my gosh.
Classical singing and things like that. If you're trying to do something new, you're making a claim that I'm doing something new, and then.
Yeah, and well, what gives you the right to say this instead of Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau, right? How dare you even try to do what he did? Well, I can't do what he did for many, many reasons.
Right.
But I have a right to sing those songs.
Right.
If they are beautiful to me, if I love them, I have a right to sing those songs in the time I live in the voice that I have.
Right.
And, you know, let's say Schubert, for instance, had a really interesting view of what it is to be a human being on this planet, and what it is to see beauty and to hurt and to be sad and to be overjoyed. He's got songs about everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course I have a right to sing them. Of
Right.
course I have a right to examine all that, because I also am a human being. But it's scary to do it. It's scary to examine feelings that you don't necessarily want to examine.
Mm-hmm.
But like you got being scared and doing it anyway, right? That's kind of and doing it because I want to explore that. Did I answer your question?
Yes. I guess at some point there has to be that leap of faith after the clarity that you have about what you want to do, and then you have to just jump.
You have to just jump, and you have to trust that the process, sometimes you get really lucky.
Right.
And you just you get it.
Right.
And sometimes it takes decades.
Right.
But if you are examining every day, what do I want with this? And if you still want it after 5 years, then keep going.
Right. I know you watch a lot of Star Trek. So do you know, like, on all the Star Trek captains have their kind of word like engage and things like that. The new one, they use the word jump, and for some reason that really spoke to me. Yeah, anytime that they're going on warp, they'll just say jump.
Oh, that's good too.
Yeah.
Well, I like engage because I love Captain Picard. But for actual singing, the idea when I have engage is to engage my body and move my breath and say a thing.
Right.
I am engaged emotionally, technically. Everything is I like that word.
That is true. Jump can have a mixed kind of emotion. Just like, like if you're an Olympics level person, you're jumping has a certain meaning.
Right. Yeah.
If you're a rat, jumping has a different meaning.
Right.
So that's true. What are some of your favorite kind of music to sing?
To sing, oh, I love so many things. Well, I mean, I do a lot of contemporary music. Sometimes that's my favorite thing to sing, and sometimes I hate it. I'm gonna be honest. Sometimes I'm like, I don't understand. And I have to spend so much more time like trying to figure out what it is. I shouldn't say hate it, that's wrong. I have to spend a lot of time trying to learn the music, because it's often really difficult. And then sometimes it's worth every minute of time examining and looking at it with a little microscope and trying to figure out what you want. And let's face it, being able to email the composer and ask them, what do you want here, is so great. Right. But oh my goodness, give me Mozart, Handel, Strauss. Oh my gosh, Strauss songs are just like heaven. And this, I don't know. I mean, Mozart is tricky because it requires everything of you.
Mm-hmm. It's very, very deceptively tricky. In the surface, when you listen to it, it's just like, that's an easy tune. Like what?
And you think that you can imagine where it's going harmonically, and then you look at it on the page, like, oh, that doesn't look that bad. And then you go to see, you're like, oh my gosh, it is. I mean, anyone can do it, but to do it masterfully, good luck. It takes a lifetime.
Very interesting repertoire.
Yeah.
Do you prefer to sing opera more than art songs, or do you have kind of equal preference? Or I guess the question is more about, do you like being in stage as a recitalist versus a character in an opera?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I love opera. I love it. You know what I love is the process of it. The actual process of being in a room with other people who are creating this thing with me, a director and a conductor and colleagues who are singing. I love that process. But when you say the word character, I anyway, believe most singers build character into their recital as well. And it's not, you're not putting on a character that, you know, flounces out on stage. And that's not what I'm talking about, but like every song has its character. And so then the arc of the character is much shorter in an 8-minute song versus a 4-hour opera.
Right.
So you have to find that arc right away and be like, you do not have a second where you can kind of sit back.
Right.
You can kind of sometimes get away with that in opera a little bit. I don't know. I don't have a preference. I love both.
Right.
And I love concert work. I love chamber music work. Like, there's a totally different dynamic with just a singer and a pianist than with a singer and a string quartet. Like, singing with a string quartet is just like a whole other world. Singing with 4 singers is a totally different experience than singing with an instrumentalist.
Right.
It's a totally different way of thinking. It blows my mind every time. Like, is that what a violinist is thinking about? Versus a singer? It's a completely different world. But like, and you have these really interesting conversations and you talk about it and you. So I can't pick. I don't.
Right. There's also, like, from a listener point of view for a recital, like with a string quartet and a singer, there's a bit of an intimacy to that kind of setting.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of experience from a listener point of view.
Yeah, and you have.
I guess art songs are meant to be a bit of an intimate ordeal as opposed to.
Okay, I'm gonna flesh out this idea. I don't know if it's gonna make sense. I feel like in a recital setting, I have more options for the sound I want to create because the soundscape is just less. Whereas in opera, I'm singing with so many other instrumentalists that you have really no choice but to really like ground it. And so, you know, if you're singing a Bellini moment with just like some strings playing some triplets, that's different. But for the most part, like when it comes to singing a song recital with piano, I am in control. I get to choose every color.
Right.
Every color, and there's nothing stopping me from trying it out. Whereas in opera, I don't always have the option. It's like, well, there's a French horn playing with you, so you've got to sing louder, or you have to have a different color in order to match that tone.
Color in terms of the finer details of the sound, like in opera, you just have to always be above a certain threshold to kind of push through the orchestra.
And it's not even about dynamic. It's about it's timbre, maybe. Is it? It requires.
You're a part of a bigger texture. Your voice is a part of a bigger texture.
Yes.
Right. So you're trying to do a nice pianissimo, and you have horns accompanying you in that section. So you have to think about that pianissimo in a whole different way, right?
Exactly. Right. So the pianissimo in opera is going to be a different pianissimo than it is on the song stage, for sure. Because you can go to a totally pale, white, breathy sound in art song as a choice, a color choice, which you could never do that in opera. Right.
Next question is a completely different question. Right. So, gardening. You were an avid gardener. So how does that fit into this whole thing, in terms of colors? And I know that you think about music notes in terms of colors. Do you have any kind of parallels between these two works that you do?
Yeah, well, gardening is just such a... people always say it's relaxing. I don't know if it's relaxing because it's physical labor.
Right.
But it's a color, yes, but texture is a big deal for me as well in gardening. So, like, okay, I'm going to challenge whoever's listening to this. Next time, like in April, let's say, when you go for a walk and you just look at trees that people have, not necessarily flowering, because we get really like excited about flowers, but what about trees and bushes and things? Like, if you look at the texture of it, you can have the most, like, it's a rainbow of textures, feathery things, sharp things, shiny things, dull things, fuzzy things, tiny things, big things, like all these different textures of leaves. And like, especially when you get it, like, because in Vancouver, we're so lucky to have so many different types of maples, for instance, Japanese maples. Oh my gosh, the leaf texture and the color and the shape and the way it's absolutely endless. And then you can have endless combinations of things. It's really hard not to just put all of it in your garden. You're like, I want all of it. And then you just kind of have like a cacophony, right? Which is the same as singing. Like, yes, I want all of it. Right. But, you know, like keeping it simple and making it like be about color and scent and texture and smell, and how do I want people to feel, or how do I want to feel in my garden? Right. Do I want to feel rejuvenated, excited, or soft, or dreamy, or do I, you know, that's going to influence the sorts of colors I choose. And of course I change my mind all the time.
One of the things that I came across when I was kind of doing the research for how to set up a camera and how to set up lighting and all those things is one of the channels that I watched. The person was saying that if you're thinking about setting up camera and lighting, think about shapes instead of objects. Don't think that there's a light, or there's a painting behind you. Just think about it as a shape, and think about everything as a shape, and just highlight shapes and highlight the geometry, and that's how you get interesting things. I think you kind of touch on this thing when we talk about music and what the piano line is doing, like behind the singer. What is the arc of that thing, and what is that inner voice in the piano doing, and how does that relate to what you're singing and things like that. So how should one approach studying music from that point of view?
Oh, well, if we're thinking about the act of collaboration, you know, one thing I am very passionate about when I'm working with singers is that you have to understand what's going on. If we're talking about art song, what is going on in the piano? What is the piano saying? What are they doing? Are they merely just there to, quote, accompany you? Or does the piano actually have a voice and a storyline and a character? Pretty much always. It's very rarely just accompanying you. It's doing something. It's actually, I don't think it's ever just like coming along for the ride. It's either pushing the drama, or it's holding it back, or it's emotional turmoil. It's the things that are not said, or it's the things that are said, even though the piano doesn't necessarily have words. Sometimes pianists have words in contemporary rap, but like, what is the storyline here? Like, my favorite example always is how Schumann wrote for song repertoire, right? There's the inevitable postlude, right? With this great, long, drawn-out piano moment, and then the singer's like, well, like, what am I supposed to do here? You're supposed to like be in the story, is what you're supposed to do. You're not just standing there decorously kind of waiting for the piano to be done. You're part of this story, but the piano is so much a character. And so, you know, like, I often have for myself, or I have my students make up words for what is the piano saying here, and then like if we make up words for it that can go on in your mind while you're listening to it. What is the character? What is being said in this? Yeah.
So, in a way, the piano, the melody lines and things like that in the piano is kind of outlining the silhouette of like a story that the singer is singing about, or something like that.
Yeah, and oftentimes, like especially with like romantic German repertoire, the piano depicts nature. And often nature is depicting some kind of it's emotion, is what the emotion that is going on in the character's soul, whether the words are being said out loud or not. It's this kind of it's tempestuous, or it's lethargic, or it's something, right?
just overwhelmingly clear when you look at music like Winterizer or something like that.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So, examining all of those little tiny details, well, it makes your life so much more interesting, right? Because it's like, as singers, we can't sing a chord.
Mm-hmm.
We can't sing a harmony on our own,
Mm-hmm.
as much as I try. Trust me, my overtone singing is like exciting in the car. Like, did I do it? Yeah, like really, like, so we have to spend that time thinking about what the other character in the music is doing for us, whether it's orchestra or piano.
Right.
Yeah.
So you always talk about having to, when singers are learning new music, how to visualize that music and how to internalize that music using visual cues, like marking different points in the score with visual cues and things like that. And how imagining a certain scene or something like that will make a big difference in how you produce the sound versus thinking about technique and things like that. Or breathing into the space of the phrase that you're going to sing. So it's a psychological undertaking that kind of informs your technique kind of thing, if that makes any...
Well, I'm a singing teacher and I think about technique all the time. And I want to understand vocal anatomy and blah, 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 and the science of singing, and it's constant and it's always changing. There's always some new study. But nobody cares. Nobody cares about vocal function when they listen to a piece. And actually, as I'm kind of talking about this, I'm realizing none of my students actually care either. They were like, I don't care about my laryngeal muscles. They don't care. They just want to know how to make the sound that they want to make.
Right.
If a singer comes to me and they say, my tone sounds vague, let's say, or breathy or something. How do I make it not? Rather than me saying, here's a bunch of steps that you can do to create the sound you want. How about we use our imagination? So say, well, what do you want instead?
Right.
Oh, you want it to sound pointy? Oh, you want it to sound like an edge? Oh, you want it to sound like an ice cube? Great. What does an ice cube sound like?
Right.
What does a witch sound like? Oh, a witch. I can make that sound, right? Versus me saying, well, put your vocal folds together at that. Like, nobody cares, and it doesn't compute. I mean, I know people care, but...
Do you think from just that point of view there's a relationship between a voice actor and a singer?
Ooh, voice actor and a singer?
How you should approach your voice. I think there's a lot to learn from voice actors in terms of how they approach certain text.
Oh, absolutely. Like if a voice actor wanted if they wanted a voice to be really nasal, then how do they make that sound? How would I make that sound as a singer?
Right.
And what does nasal actually mean?
Right.
Does it mean it's literally sound is coming out my nose, like that sound, or is it something else?
Right.
Right? Imagination is everything in creating vocal sound, and I think it's probably everything in playing a string instrument, in playing the piano, in playing a percussive. Right. I think it really is. The more you can use imagination over technique, for most people, it's way better results right off the bat because they can relate it to something tangible that they know. Like relating, if I could say to you, well, what would that sound be like? What would your breath be like if I suddenly dumped a bucket of ice on your head? Right. How would you breathe? Right? And what would the sound be when you came out? I'm willing to bet it would be high and loud.
Right. Which kind of informs the other, which kind of also kind of indicates about breath, right? Like how you would breathe. And if the aria that you're going to sing is your rage after somebody dropped ice on you, like how are you going to breathe for that versus how are you going to breathe when you're going to sing a love song or something?
And your breath informs everything about how your inhale informs everything about what you're going to say. Like, we don't breathe for what we have just said. We breathe for what we are about to say. And it is so natural. And like, even just like right now, I'm talking to you and I haven't planned out everything, single word of the sentence I'm going to say. Like, it's so immediate and quick, and our inhale and the way we use the breath, it is like so magical when and we do it. Every single person does it, and we do it all day in our speaking. So why don't we do it in our singing?
So just like an actor would kind of analyze characters. I don't know if actors actually do this, but I think that's what they do. That they will like look at characters and like look at real life people and study them, so that when they have actual people, when they have plays where they have to portray such a character, that's how they know that this is how that particular character acts. So in that fashion, do you think a singing student should always be conscious of how they're breathing to certain emotions, or how they breathe normally when they're going to say a certain sentence, and that memory should be very clear to them when they want to access that again when it comes to singing?
Yeah, well, and then hopefully what will happen is that if you practice enough breathing for what you were about to say, then you don't ever even have to think about breathing.
Right.
You don't have to think about it. You don't have to, like, I mean, there's a few times where you have to go like, okay, this is 8 bars without a breath. Or I have a cold and I don't want to cough in the middle of my... Right. Okay, that's different. But no, for most things, you don't have to think about... You shouldn't even have to think about it. It should just be... should be character and situationally a response to that.
Right. Situational response. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes. This is what I'm understanding from what that word, that phrase that you said, situational response. You're a character in a particular situation, and you have to be very aware of how you're going to respond yourself if you are in that situation. You cannot take yourself out of that situation and then, hey, I am a singer with this much training and I'm going to do this like that.
Exactly. And you know, like, what's amazing is if you go to an opera that is like just fantastic, like production and singing and everything, you actually forget that they're singing.
Right.
You just, like, it's glorious and it's sound and it's all these things, kind of like, and boy, that doesn't happen very often, right? Like, where even I, who is analyzing every detail of someone singing, because I can't stop, where I get totally taken out of it, and then it's just a story.
Right.
I just want a story.
Right.
It happens in the theater. Like, you forget you're watching a movie when it's a really engaging movie.
Right.
You're in a
Because
story.
you're getting pulled into it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
One of the things that kind of stay in between you expressing completely yourself and as an artist, whether it's composition or singing or anything, it's your need, not yours, but one's need to control the situation, control the outcome because of fear of judgment and things like that. So how do you kind of learn to trust the process? How do you learn to kind of, as a gardener, how do you learn to trust that all that you're planting will bloom come spring?
Well, sometimes it doesn't always work, right? Sometimes it doesn't bloom, and sometimes you just have to say, well, I overwatered that seed, or
Right.
There's always that little bit of a risk. But if you don't plant it, how will you know? And every gardener knows, don't just plant 1, plant 4, so that you at least have, chances are you'll have 1, or plant 400 zinnia seeds and you'll have 399.
Right.
So you said something in there about like, it was something along the lines of what will people want?
Yeah, the fear of judgment.
Well, fear of judgment. Well, I mean, it's the worst.
It is.
It is. Judging. Oh, okay. Well, are people really judging you, or are you judging you?
Right.
Or are you judging the way people judge you? Do you know what I mean? Right? Like, it's a nasty circle. I'm willing to bet that most people are not judging as harshly as we think.
Right. But in our head, it's just...
In our head, it's huge, right? Like, you make a mistake on stage in performance, and it feels like an earthquake, and like the world is falling down, and then you hear the recording, and you're like, wait, what? I thought, didn't I make a mistake? I thought this was wrong. It's like such a blip, it doesn't even register. Oh my gosh, that's so ridiculous. Right. Yeah, I mean, the judgment thing is... it can feel very insurmountable. And I don't know, one of the ways to get through it is to ask yourself every day, not why am I doing this? It's very easy to quit when you start asking that, but like, what do I want? And what do I want to say?
Right.
What is the sound I want to make to say this?
Right.
And trust that your voice is totally unique to you. The way you form words, the way your vocal folds are made in your body that resonates it, that is like totally unique to you. And that's important, and that those things alone will make you stand out as an artist, as an individual.
So it's about exploring oneself and their craft, and to kind of
100%.
get more, have clarity about what you want as an artist.
All the time. You know, I think asking yourself, what do I want to say, and how am I going to say it, and what do I need in order to accomplish that? It's asking yourself that question every single day as you sit down to do the work.
Right.
What do I want, and how do I get it?
Right.
Rather than, why am I doing this?
Right.
That's a dangerous road to go down.
Right. Okay, so you have some new projects coming up.
We do.
With the Vancouver Opera.
Yeah, well, Vancouver Opera has partnered with us. This is, my partner is Tina Chang, pianist and repetiteur for the Vancouver Opera. And we're starting we're calling it Opera Sparks, the artist development workshop.
Right.
And it will be a week in July where we invite some people of excellence, some hopefully 10 people will come, and we're going to spend some time really exploring these big questions, like what do I want? How do I want to say this? And what are the parameters that have been laid out for these many generations of opera, people singing this role or this opera? And why are those parameters there? Am I allowed to break them? Why not?
Right.
And can I please break them? But within, like, without breaking the rules of the music or the text.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, occasionally I think we can change some words and some things, but what's been laid out on the page, we want to honor the music, we want to honor the libretto, we want to honor the orchestration, while also looking at some of the issues that come up with in opera a lot, which are, you know, like misogyny and racism and all these things that are like, we don't necessarily want to cancel these operas out. We want to look at them and go like, well, how can I make this mine? How can I put my individual stamp on this without totally stepping all over it and, like, you know, completely recreating it?
Right. That is a very good intention. I hope this is a series that is going to continue.
I hope so.
Yeah, it sounds very exciting.
Thank you.
Good luck with that.
Thank you.
And for people who want lessons and things like that with you, and Where should they go to look you up?
I have a website, RobynKlassenVoice.com, Robyn with a Y. And you can kind of find all the information you need there. And yeah, voice lessons are hard.
Voice lessons are hard.
Yeah, like if people are thinking about it, like recognize that it's a lot of soul searching, and it's not always comfortable to do that.